Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is your horror homie, Matt Orozco here from Macabre Daily, and I am super excited today to be joined by writer and director and editor Woody Bess and actor and producer Trey Holland of Portal to Hell, which is coming our way from Obscured Pictures. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Appreciate
having
it.
us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And before I get too far into questions, just want to let everyone know that the film will be well, I don't know if it's premiering, but it is playing at Slamdance Festival this weekend in Los Angeles. You just told me you've got a sold out Sunday show and an almost sold out Saturday show. So congratulations on the already warm reception for the film is receiving.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is the premiere, Slam Dance. So Saturday night, world premiere. Very, very happy to be premiering in the city that we shot it in. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
we're stoked Slam Dance is here this year, and then they were kind enough to have us. You know what I mean? So we're really happy.
Yeah, well, I definitely felt like I recognized those apartments you filmed at because I may have lived in one of them in North Hollywood at some point. So,
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
uh,
oh
That is
yeah,
where we shot.
then you
Yeah.
might
yeah.
have.
Oh
Yeah,
Yeah, I
God.
was
Yeah.
used to live on Lancashire and Victory, so I was like, oh, this feels like
Oh,
this
you're
looks
so
familiar.
close.
very,
So,
very close.
we're Magnolia and Cahuenga is where we
Oh,
shot.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so not too far from where it used to be a Long Wongs, I think. I don't know if it's still there,
Yep.
um, but anyways, I could go on all day about you living in LA and now living in Ohio. But Woody, I got my first question is for you, which is, and again, I feel like it's such a boilerplate one, so I'm sorry if you've already answered it probably 10 times. But what was your initial inspiration for the story of Portal to Hell?
Yeah, there's not like one thing. I'm just like a huge like horror fan, and like I just like a lot of my favorite directors or like favorite films are like in the horror space and the horror comedy, from like Shaun of the Dead and Get Out and It Follows and like Mike Flanagan's work. And then like yeah, the portal is kind of I guess like as like a grand metaphor. Like every day we just kind of like tolerate evil in some way, shape, or form, be it like, you know, wealth inequality, like racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, and like we know it exists, and we just kind of like turned a blind eye. And like there's a literal portal to hell, and everyone's just kind of like, well, we've got our own problems to worry about, so someone will figure it out. So like that's kind of where that comes from.
I mean, it's ironic you say this as the inspiration, especially the current moment we're living in, which feels like a fresh hell. Yeah, a fresh laundry door is opening every single day, it seems like. So I'm kind of wondering how many machines this laundromat has. But
Yeah.
Trey, I'm going to go over to you on this. I mean, Dunn is such an affable guy in such an abnormal situation. In fact, he's probably the most engaged in life telemarketer or debt collector I've ever heard in my entire life. But I'm just curious to know how you would think you would react if you were placed into Dunn's shoes. Do you think you'd act a little bit like how he was trying to take the right way, or would you have a wildly different take on this opportunity?
I would love to say that I would have his, his helpful heart, but I'd probably be running away, to be honest with you. I'd be getting him far away. In Keith's words, I remember when we first met with him, he had a question when we were going through the script. He said, "Why do you keep going back to this laundromat?" And so like that's that it's like, well, Dunn has to, but really, I mean, that's a good point. It's like I would be running very far away from it. So
Right.
luckily Dunn didn't do that, and then he was able to uh insert himself into and try to be a helpful person in a horrible situation. So
Definitely one of the most helpful. And what a great call out from Keith, just cutting right through it, just to see why would you keep why would you keep
I
doing this to
love it.
yourself? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, yeah. But yeah, he's the man. He's the man. We've talked about him a lot, obviously, and it's like we are so fortunate to work with such a legend, Keith David and Richard as well, and both were such great humans and also actors. That's why they're at the top. They're just the
right.
best.
Well, I've got a question about them, but I'm going to get to it in just a little bit.
Yep.
Because I
Sorry to skip
before I
ahead.
don't no, 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 trust me. Because I also know this is about you two, right? You know, obviously Keith and Richard
Absolutely. Yeah.
have an amazing have, they've had amazing careers, but this is your all's time to really shine with what you put together. And I don't want to go too much into spoilers, but there are these kind of overarching themes about purpose and loss and kind of how we see ourselves in the world. how do we make a, make a name for ourselves or make a mark in a good way. And I'm curious to know kind of what was the reason for including these topics. Obviously we talked a little about this kind of idea that there's always this weird shit happening every day and how do we put up with it? But there's also these really very personal stories about, loss and connecting with other people. So we're wondering kind of where those came from.
Yeah, I guess like most of my favorite people are like fuck ups, and like they've, myself included, like they've made mistakes and like they regret them. And like that's kind of like how we stumble towards being better, decent people isn't by like, you know, I don't remember all the good things I've ever done. Like I
Right.
forgot like what every bad thing I've done. Like I remember that. And like that's kind of like it's those things that kind of guide the person I am today. And like kind of like, oh, like I don't want to like make the same mistake twice. And like it's all just kind of like we all have to learn and grow. Yeah, and then that, yeah, sorry.
No, no. I mean, I think like it's an interesting kind of addition to, you know, having this sense of like shared purpose and making sure we don't and we learn from our mistakes is something I think we all lack the self-awareness to do all the time, which is why I found Dunn such an interesting character because he's just kind of trying to do his best, but at the same time, the world is not giving him the best to work with at all times. Uh, and Trey, I'm curious to know how it was for you balancing both roles as the lead actor, but also the producer. I mean, especially on an indie film where producers are kind of like the end all be all of a lot of things. So, how did you find time to dedicate time to the craft, but also making sure that the craft tables and everything else was there in the background?
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's wearing a lot of hats, but at the same time, I think it's you know, like finding, luckily we had each other, and we're both doing a lot, and we've worked together a long time, and we know what the other one needs and that kind of thing, and there's a comfort on set once we get there. So if we can get there, the prep is super important. Like you said, make sure like Crafty's there and all this kind of stuff, and then make sure that you've got people on your project that are just as passionate about it as you are. You know what I mean? And we were so lucky to have everybody that's, I mean, worked on this project. I can't wait to shout them all out. That it really, we're so passionate about it from the get-go, and it just like that fires you up a little bit too to, really put in some good work. Yeah, at the same time, accidents happen while you're in the
Right.
middle of one of these like, scenes dealing with guilt and with loss and all this kind of stuff, and it's like you kind of have to step out of it and take care of something or whatever, and so that's challenging, but at the same time you're surrounded by all these people that are just wanting to tell the story and do it the best way possible. And is it challenging? Absolutely. But is it rewarding? I mean, this is it in itself. We couldn't be happier where we are now. So
And how did you two get connected? I mean, I'm curious. You said you worked together for
Yeah.
some time. So what's the
Uh,
what's the backstory?
no, so like I went to USC for film school, and like Trey for like one of my first shorts like came in on auditioned, and like we are like, damn, that guy's that's a good actor. But we did the short, and like we just kind of became friends and like played video games together for like a while, like and like just kind of like always like brought each other on each other's projects when we had them, and like we're just kind of like, well, like I want to make a feature. Like, do you want to do this crazy journey? Yeah.
yeah, no, just a shout. I don't know if I'm gonna like mess myself up for some future work here, but I don't care. I was at the time the short that he's talking about. I was hip pocketed at WME and was going into some rooms that I wasn't ready for. You know what I mean? And like and just like being super green and all this kind of stuff. And but you read the same kind of stuff you get all the time. You read like all this procedural stuff, and it's like it's so repetitive, and like it's like hard to make a character choice out of like some of the, it just is what it is. But I'll never forget when I came across it was a short called 11-Minute Mile, and I read those words and I was like, this is the best thing I've, everything that they've sent me, this is the best thing that I've read out of all of this. And it's this guy at USC. And I was like, I threw everything into it because I was like, I knew that there was talent and there, and luckily also behind the talent, there's a great fucking dude that we got along with, and have been together kind of ever since. So, but yeah, that's kind of like the genesis of it, I guess.
That's awesome. I mean, it reminds me that I interviewed a couple of gentlemen last year who did a movie called Foil that has a very similar kind of like, just two guys getting together making a movie. Um,
Yeah,
and they didn't have the same support from like all the kind of, the cast of characters you were able to get, but at the same time, there's that same sense of, friendship, helping to make a movie, and that having a strong sense of camaraderie at the core of it. But I did promise a question about Richard and Keith, and more just curious to know who has better stories, because I've heard both of them tell stories before, and I gotta imagine that between the two of them, it's got to be like the Tyson and the Holyfield of minus the ear biting of storytelling.
oh God. Like, well, they're both like, yeah, they're both really good. So they actually like, well, they weren't on set at the same time. So
No, they
like,
were on set of like way separate of each
yeah,
other,
like Keith
right?
was our very beginning, and like Richard was our like very
Very
last
end.
scene. But no, they're both like incredible story, obviously incredible actors, incredible storytellers. Like, um, like very different. God, it's hard. Like, that's a good question.
Yeah, no, they both got great. I mean, you can imagine like they're just legends in their own right. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, we learned so much from both of them early on with Keith. Woody tells this great story about how Keith he's such a teacher, and he is, and we were so fortunate that he lent his expertise, and not only just the stories, but like you know the the craft that he has, that he's worked on perfecting all of these years, to lend his advice was just invaluable to us in the project, and I think it shows. To take all that, what we learned from him, and then all the way to shooting Rich in New York, it was like, we were better, at both of what we did by that point. You know what I mean? And it all started with that. So, but it's funny. They were both great, and Rich is hilarious, and so is Keith in his own right, in his way. But they're just awesome guys, and that's why they're at the top, right?
Right.
So it's so.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine I'd be so distracted trying to ask them all these different things that I'd probably not be making the movie. So you all have stronger resolve and convictions than I do. But my last question for you both is a bit of a fun one. If you're asked to program a double feature with Portal to Hell, what is the other movie you would pair with it?
Oh man. Uh,
I don't know. For me, I think it's Babe 2, Pig in the City.
I
Um,
mean, it's both dark and funny. It's the most
yeah.
messed up
No.
kids movie ever made.
No, for some reason, with all these questions, the movie that keeps popping in my head is Midsommar, or however you say that word. I don't know. I love that film. I think that would be like a cool night, a double feature, for sure.
yeah, I would. One we like brought up a ton that's actually not a horror film is
Oh
A
yeah.
Killing of Two Lovers, and like that was one where like early on we were kind of like not like struggling, but like trying to figure out like almost like a style, and like they'll just like not edit, and we're like obviously less extreme than them in the end, but like we're like, oh man, if there's any way to like do a scene in just one take and just like let the performance breathe, like let's do it. So like that would be like a good pairing, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so as well. Definitely, interesting tones too. It's more just kind of slice of life stuff, and the mundanity of it all. But gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you both. And I just want to say congratulations on the upcoming premiere this weekend at Slamdance. Folks are going to love it. The worst part about reviewing these things at home is that I don't get to experience it with an audience. Um, but looking forward to seeing whatever you all both are up to next. And again, we'll cover more information about Portal to Hell once you guys get distribution and all that good stuff. So looking forward to that news.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Matt. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.